And then that gives us lastly into the pale horse. When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, "Come." And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed him. And they were given authority over a fourth of the earth to kill with the sword, and with famine, and with pestilence, and by wild beasts of the earth. So, we got the pale horse here.
And this is where you see the famine and the pestilence and all the craziness come back to start happening.
Yeah.
And that's where we were just talking about how the others were against, like, the church and everything. Now this is...
Well, even in this one, I would say it's against the church, but in a different way, right?
Yeah.
It's the church still having to suffer through other outside things, right?
Yeah.
And the pale horse is death, and where death goes, and Hades follows him, right? Which Hades is essentially the term for like the underworld, like being buried, right? So like you're gonna be put in the ground, right?
Yeah.
So what follows death is famine and pestilence and the sword. But, and getting back to the sword thing, is that this is not Macaria here. This is Ramphia, which is actually the term that's used for a great sword, which would have been something used in battle. So it's emphasizing war here.
Right.
And this doesn't necessarily, I wouldn't say this necessarily means war against Christians, but it means war in general. So, like, obviously, if a Christian's in poverty or already being persecuted, if war breaks out, suffering's going to happen.
Of course, yeah.
And typically, kind of, it follows just about the outline it gives, right? War happens, then famine sets in because of war, which means people start going hungry because there's not resources. And then after, when famine starts setting in, pestilence sets in. People die, get sick, right?
Yeah.
If you turn over for me to Ezekiel 14:21, you'll see that he pretty much says the exact same thing in Ezekiel 14:21, just about.
I gotta find it.
I'll let you get there.
Yeah. Thank you.
But I would say that this is also evidence to show that the black horse doesn't mean famine, and that the red horse doesn't mean war, because we see that the pale horse means war and famine and pestilence and death in general.
And that's what I was making, like, that's when all of this is coming in with the pale horse, and that's when other people were, I guess you'd say, getting it wrong by the other 2 or 3 horses, or 3 horses, because this is the 4th horse.
Mm-hmm.
All right, 14:21.
Yes.
For thus says the Lord God, how much more when I send upon Jerusalem my 4 disastrous acts of judgment, sword, famine, wild beast, and pestilence, to cut off from it man and beast.
Yeah. So even in Ezekiel, those are the 4 judgments that are being given against Israel, right? So, and these exemplify that these are the persecutions that the church are going to face.
Yep.
But kind of concluding the 4 horsemen, because it's probably, I would say the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse is probably one of the better, most well-known images from Revelation that people know. Even if people don't generally know, I guess, about the 4 horsemen or what they are or what they mean, people have probably heard of the 4 horsemen.
Yeah.
But I think it's also important for us to know that though the 4 horsemen are here, the 4 horsemen are still, they are still under the control of God. Yeah. So God is still in control. Like, he permits these things to take place, right? Yeah. We see this as
he's in control of everything.
Yeah, the red horseman was permitted to take peace, and he was given a great sword. It was given to him. And the pale horseman is given authority over a 4th of the earth. Like, God is ultimately in control of all things and all events that take place. even these events and things that take place.
You can see all that when you're reading.
Yeah, and even with the pale horse, we can see this as he's still like really see God's authority over it, because God is going, you have a fourth of the earth and that's all you get.
Yeah.
Right? Like that is the extent, and that's all I'm allowing. And so even God is in control of all these things. And so I think that should also give us comfort that these are things that we will experience in our lives and until Christ returns, all of these things.
Yeah, they're going on today.
Yeah, they're going on today. Look around the world. There's all sorts of persecutions,
Yeah.
famines and pestilence and wars and diseases and all sorts of stuff. I mean, even just consider, it doesn't take long to look back in history. Even like you get like the Black Death coming in and all these things. Like you get, I mean, that's why we call it the Black Death, right? Because it brought death, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just, but it's to know that all of these things will one day come to an end.
Yeah.
And we start